It's actually July 6th, in
What did I
case
just
anybody
say?
cares.
I just said June 6th, didn't I? Am I looking at the right agenda? Okay, you are right, Mike.
The
you're right.
agenda, I think it's a typo on the agenda.
Yes, and I was just reading it. Yeah. So, all right. To bring us up to date, it is now July 6th, 2021, and 3:07 p.m. And we will start with the approval of the open minutes from June 1st, 2021. Am I right? Okay, so we have closed minute meetings. Kelly, I want to make sure I have the right ones here. I have open meeting minutes from June 1st and closed meeting minutes from June 1st.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So
then you should have open meeting minutes from June 22nd.
Right. And then at the end of that document are closed meeting minutes from June 1st, but I take it they're the same again. Do you see what I'm
Correct.
saying?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So we are first going to do the open meeting minutes from June 1st, which I assume everybody has had a chance to review. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor of approving the June 1st, 2021 open meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I vote as well, and that motion passes. We then go on to the closed meeting minutes for June 1st, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
And is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote as well for approval, and that motion passes. Going on to the open meeting minutes for June 22nd, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? I mean, any discussion?
Aye.
Yes.
No.
First, any discussion? No. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And I also vote in favor, and that motion passes. So I guess first we have the executive director report, which on which there's only one item, which is the online financial disclosure system. So Kelly, would you please give us the report on that? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sure. So I reached out to Karen Bedouin, who's the project manager from IT for the financial disclosure project, as well as the lobbyist project, to see if she could come to the meeting. She couldn't, so I sent her an email for a status update, which she replied to, and I forwarded to the commission. Obviously, I've been asking for them to make the tweaks and updates to the system, both on the feedback that we've heard from users about various different languages, the 2021 form, and the Form 2 for the boards and commissions that fill out Form 2. Those are still pending. I'm happy to try to have her come in person to the next meeting. When we talked about these issues, I think in April, it was my impression that they were going to be fixed, I think, more quickly than July 6th. But I have been sending emails and trying to be on top of it, and it's just a little bit out of my hands.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. So this was something that I had wanted to be on the agenda for today. Also, Kelly's been reporting on it every month as well. And just the issue or the circumstance that I would like to just have the commission just think about and decide how we want to proceed is, as you all know, there are two forms of financial disclosure that can be required under the code for different categories of people to file. Form 1 is one that asks for a tremendous amount more detail than does Form 2. So as an example, Form 1 requires that the answering person disclose what is for many people the entirety of their like interest in corporations, stock holdings, that kind of thing. I believe not mutual funds, but stock, for example. Whereas Form 2, you would disclose that only if you own an interest in a company that does business with your board or commission. The Form 2 people tend to be members of boards and commission and et cetera. There are other things like that where more detail is required. So for example, Form 1 requires you to give information about, the address of property that you own and who you own it with, whereas Form 2 would ask you to say things like, who did you buy it from? How much did you pay? Do you have a mortgage on it? Where is the mortgage held? And I can't quite remember this, but I think how much the mortgage is. I believe that's the case. So those are examples of these things. So apparently, from what what Kelly has been explaining to us is that at the time that this went for people to respond, only Form 1 had been put on the system. Had essentially been coded. The developers had only done Form 1 and not done Form 2. Kelly, are you able to hear us? Okay, I guess I should wait a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, good. Okay. And Kelly can just sort of explain this, but I believe it may be the case that some people would have been given instructions if they were a Form 2 person that they could file Form 1, but sort of file it as though it were File 2, as though it were Form 2. Kelly will explain this, about what different people did, but the concern is simply that there is a possibility, and we don't know how many people this would be, that some people who are Form 2 people may have filed Form 1 and in so doing may have disclosed more than they would, that they were required to. And Kelly has been trying very hard since this was filed to encourage the IT group, which is, as I understand it, very busy, to see if they could get Form 2 online. But I felt that the commission should just, have a moment not a moment, have whatever time they want to, to weigh on this, to address this, basically maybe Kelly can explain a little bit more about what we do or don't know. She might be able to, if we ask her, she may be able to provide more information or to acquire more information. So that's why we're talking about it. Kelly, can you just talk about like who the different people would be or whether we can determine who they are?
Yeah, and to the extent, since we're being recorded, we were talking about this issue in the fall, and then in the early winter and into the spring. I mean, obviously, I was very frustrated that we weren't even going to get the online software. Then we got it at the last moment, and I asked for both forms to be available. Only Form 1 was available. I did a lot of training. I told the Form 2 people are agriculture preservation, health, library, rec and park, CCBC Board of Trustees, Ethics Commission, Planning, Revenue Authority, and Workforce Development. Now, while that sounds like a lot, there were something like 500 people that filed, and the majority, like 70% of those individuals file Form 1. I talked with Susan about this problem. I guess Susan and I identified this pretty early on, and the advice was to have them fill out Form 1 as if it was Form 2, and Susan's advice and opinion had been that it's, you know, it's never a bad thing to over-disclose. Do you remember that, Sue? Sue?
Yeah, and my thought is if somebody requests to view the documents, we can always redact
Exactly. And
anything that's been
right.
over disclosed before
Right.
we release it.
So like the problem is, as Cindy, not the problem, but the reality is, as Cindy has correctly pointed out, that there is a possibility that Form 2 people filled out Form 1 and gave more information that Susan and I discussed, and on some level it's better to over-disclose than under-disclose. If anybody had asked for a copy of the financial disclosure, that would be redacted. When we talked about this issue, I think 1 or 2 meetings ago, the plan in a perfect world was that as soon as Form 2 was available to be online, we would have sent an email to any Form 2 person that filled out Form 1, giving them the option to fill out Form 2 online. Towards the end, we gave anyone that was a Form 2 person the option to fill the Form 2 out by paper and not necessarily online. So I haven't counted the numbers, but my prediction is it will be less than 40 people that filled out Form 2 online as opposed to Form 2 paper. And then of those 40 people, how many of them in fact actually over disclosed? I don't know that number. I think the challenge is, as Susan and Cindy and I have discussed, the best solution would be to have Form 2, the new Form 2 be online and ask them to, if they want to kind of like refill it out. So is that enough background for you, Cindy? Any more?
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you I was under the impression that not everybody who's a Form 2 person was given the option to file it in paper form, in part because I don't believe that I
That's
got
right.
such an email. So I just,
No, that's right.
yeah.
We took the position, generically speaking, that any current employee or current board member had to fill it out online. But anybody that called or I did trainings that was a Board 2 member, I told them, fill this out as if it were Form 1. Now, can I, sitting here, say that every person I said that to understood and comprehend? I don't know. But at the end, there were a lot of current members that were filling out Form 2 in the last 2 or 3 weeks of April. So anybody that filled out their financial disclosure the last 2 or 3 weeks of April that was a Form 2 person likely did it by paper. So it might actually be smaller than 40 people. It might be closer to like 10 or 15. I don't know. And I think the other challenge is it's hard to know if they would have in fact over disclosed, because part of this is like your personality when you're filling out this financial disclosure. If it's a close call, and I always give the advice, as I know Sue does, it's better to over disclose than under disclose. So like if somebody put down they had stocks in BG&E, maybe they did that because they thought BG&E would have been doing business with their board. I mean, I think it's an issue. I think I'm not sure what the appropriate solution would be. I guess the first thing to do would be to identify how many potential individuals we are talking about.
Right. So I think it does make sense to try to identify that. I'll tell you, my concern and wanting to raise this is that I think back in May, I guess, because it wasn't the due date April 30th. Probably, am I correct on that? Right. So back in May, I think that it seemed that maybe the IT group it was hoped for that there might be a possibility of loading it on quickly. I think that was prior to us understanding the time constraints that they had with the other things they had on their to-do list, essentially. I do think that a possibility is that people could simply be told now rather than waiting for that to eventually get online. I mean, right now we're getting no assurance that it will be online. The new ones will be online at any particular time. Is that people could simply be told you have the right if you want to, or you have the ability if you want to redo a paper form. I'm not saying that's what the commission should do. I simply wanted to put it out there so the commission could discuss it. And one of the reasons I have this concern also is just the idea that it could be difficult to know how to fill it out as Form 2. In particular, that first schedule, for example, the one that talks about the real estate holdings, no matter whether that real estate holding is part of something that has to do with your commission or not, for Form 2, you just provide certain information. But for Form 1, you provide that additional information of from whom did you purchase it and how much did you pay and about the mortgage. And it may have been difficult for somebody to figure out how to only fill out part of that, since I think you have to fill out the form in order to move on to the next page. I'm not sure, but I think they'd almost have to not answer it at all and just put it on an explanation on the last page. In any event, I wanted to rate, because we're now a couple of months after what Kelly describes as she and Susan recognizing this very early. And I just wanted the commission to be, aware of that and to put it out for discussion. If the commission has questions, I mean, to me, it makes sense to ask Kelly to see if we can get, certainty as to, identification of who any staters, right, would be. And but other than that, I just put it out for discussion. I just thought it was an important thing that we have as a discussion, frankly. So do any of Laura or Lisa or Mike wish to address this?
Not I.
I have a couple questions. And it's really, I just want to make sure that I understand sort of what the situation and what the scenario is. So I was trying to understand who filled out Form 2 in paper. So Kelly, it sounded like at the beginning it was only former employees or board members that were given that option, but then later on all current employees and board members were given that option.
No, so that's half right.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know that I articulated it very well. In conjunction with the county administrative officer, we kind of had this position that current employees had to do it online, whether it was a Form 1 person or a Form 2 person. Former employees, former board members, we were just happy to have them turn it in, whether it was paper or online. At some point in April, a decision was made for Form 2 current employees that they could fill out the paper version because the Form 2 wasn't online. So that's why I feel comfortable saying it's a very, very small percentage, because you take all the financial people, everyone that files, and you then kind of synthesize it to all current members, and then from there you synthesize it to only Form 2 members, and from there you synthesize it down one more step. Does that make sense?
So were current board members given that option at any time?
Yes, in April, at the end of April, they hadn't yet filed. They were given,
So I sort of go back. So at the beginning, it was former employees or former board members were given that option. And then in April, current employees and current board members
employees.
were given that option.
No, employees fill out Form 1. Current employees never had an option to do it in paper because their form was online. Form 2 is a small percentage of everybody that files. And so we're
So
only,
no employees are Form 2?
no, employees are Form 1. There are employees that serve on a board and file as well, but because Form 1 is more inclusive, like I think one of them is Mark Millspa, right, Sue? He's in workforce development and also on, or maybe a better example is Laura Riley, who files for aging because she's a director and also files on workforce development. But she files Form 1. If there's anyone that kind of cross-pollinates, they file Form 1.
So I would like, I'm sorry, I would just like to, Lisa, if I could just make a comment and then go back to what you're saying. I would just like to make a comment. This could be different because maybe we were getting the information a different way because we're on the commission, but I will admit to everybody that I did not file mine until the day it was due on the 30th. And I had not gotten something about how it could be done by paper. I did get something very near the end about it. I was going to say about filling it out like it was fill out Form 1 like it was Form 2. But it could be, if this is what you're saying, Kelly, that this instruction that you could do it by paper that was given to the Form 2 people was done near the, it just was that you said was done a little bit long, near the end. Just wasn't done with respect to the ethics commissioner. Maybe for some reason I just didn't get that email.
So everyone that I did a training with, I orally said, I wish I could go back in time and do it differently, but orally said, fill Form 2 out as if it were Form 1. The biggest issue, as Sue knows, was workforce development because their board is 50 people. And I had done a training with them in April and there were lots of questions being asked. And at that point, because Form 2 wasn't online, anyone that hadn't yet filed, we just also gave them a paper copy of Form 2.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. And Lisa, I'm sorry, could you continue on with what you were asking?
Sure. So then my second question had to do with, and I appreciate that if a request is made for the information that it could be redacted. Could someone explain the sort of the process or the logistics for how such a request would be made and who would do the redacting?
Sure. So,
The Office of Law would do the redacting.
and we haven't gotten any requests thus far for copies of anybody's financial disclosure statements. I will tell you that while we do get requests, they're traditionally for the county executive and members of county council, which are just posted. Occasionally we'll get asked for copies of an employee's financial disclosure. I would say it's, in my time, but I've only been here 17 months, it's very rare. I don't know, Sue, what would you say about that?
Yeah, sometimes we'll get requests from reporters. Sometimes we get requests from our outside auditor when they're doing, when they're preparing their, annual audit report of the county. They'll do a random check of ethics reports or rather filings. So yeah, it's not all that often that somebody comes in and says, I want to see so-and-so's report or so-and-so's disclosure. other than elected officials, I don't remember anybody specifically asking for an individual except possibly the administrative officer.
And then
But
what would be
possible.
the sort of the legal standard for redacting? How would you know what to redact?
So
There's Public Information Act in state law, and the AG has put out guidance. So we would follow that. We would treat it the same as any request for information release, a Public Information Act request. And we would go through and take out, first of all, the law on disclosures requires removal of any personal home address information and any, social security numbers or account numbers or things like that. We would probably also redact any financial information that wasn't required to be disclosed.
And a good example of that, Lisa, just on the website are the financial disclosures for both the county executive and all members of county council. And you can see that it's the home address that's redacted, it's financial dollar amounts, I think maybe, but it's each and every thing that Sue just articulated.
Lisa, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
No, I don't think I have any more questions.
Okay, Laura?
I do not.
Okay. And then back to Mike again.
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay. Okay, so and I take it that people who request this, my understanding is any member of the public can request. I guess this question for Susan, any member of the public can request. It's not like someone has to,
Correct,
provide
but
some kind of reason.
right. But unlike the typical Public Information Act request, someone has to actually sign. They don't have to give a reason why they want to see it, but I believe they have to sign a form to receive it.
Yeah,
Am I
and
correct, Kelly?
And we yes, and we also give notice. So if
Right,
you
we
have
give
your
notice to
form,
the
you give
person.
notice
Right.
to the so if somebody wanted to see your form, Cindy, you would get notified that so-and-so has asked to see a copy of your form. And part of that is because if it's like your ex-husband or some neighbor that you're in, I mean, there's like different factors that would come into consideration based on perhaps who's requesting. I don't know that the information changes, but it's just like a part of the analysis.
Okay. So I think currently the status is that we don't know the extent to which any overdisclosure was made. That is something obviously that could be determined. We don't know how long it's going to take for the IT group to be able to do this. Is there any further information you can give us on that, by the way, Kelly?
No, not really.
Okay. And when I say for them to do this, I mean to put a truncated version of Form 2, of Form 1, which would then become Form 2, online.
I have been asking for this since the middle of March.
And I'm just going to say that one thing that the commission could do would be to simply to ask Kelly to try to, try to get her arms around how many people would be affected, and wait then to determine, what, if anything, the commission wants to, how the commission wants to proceed with respect to those people. Or the commission could decide that it wanted to do something right now. Does anyone have any thoughts on what they'd like to do on that. Lisa or Mike, I see Laura shaking her head no.
No.
I think it would be helpful to know how many people we're talking about. I think
Happy to
that's a
get those
fair
numbers.
question.
Yeah, I'm happy to get those numbers. I think the challenge would be that I can pretty quickly, off of memory, tell you based on who is members of those boards that file, whether or not they filed a Form 2 online. It would take me a lot longer to go through each person, maybe that's like 40 people. It would take me a lot longer to go through each form and, in my opinion, say whether or not I think that person over disclosed. I can tell you every single member of the CCBC board, I believe, just checked no to every single question. So I feel pretty comfortable saying those 20 people did not over disclose. But I think it would be a challenge. That would just be more time consuming. I'm happy to do it. I could probably do it by the August meeting.
So Kelly, one thing that would make some sense to me is to just look and see, and first of all, how many people filed Form 2? Excuse me, I'm so sorry. How many Form 2 people filed Form 1 online? And then for those people, literally just look to see if they were answering things as opposed to saying something like, I am filing this as though it were a Form 2. You see what I'm saying? Because I think that was part of your instruction, as I understand it, to say to people on there, like on the last page, I was doing this as though it's Form 2. Not get into whether, they might have had to disclose this particular share in this particular company, because that would have been their obligation to do because of the fact that their commission or board deals with that. But it could well be that you will find that there's no one who disclosed anything. Do you know what I mean? And that would at least give the commission the knowledge, then our only task would be to make sure that this is corrected, for the next time it's done. And if you look at it that way, I think it could well be that at most there might be, 4 or 5, and then if it's 4 or 5, maybe you could just kind of looking at it, think, I think there would be certain commissions, for example, for whom you could look and see, they say they have AT&T stock. That couldn't possibly have anything to do, with what that commission is doing. But I think just looking for the telltale signs of whether they answer the extra questions and whether they put that note in about I'm filing it as though it's Form 2, those two things together, I think could help you weed it out. You see what I'm saying? So to me, that would make some sense, but I'd like to put that to the commission. By any chance, would anyone like to make a motion that Kelly be asked to do that? And then what I would picture would be maybe she would report that back to us either at the next meeting or if she knows earlier, in an email. Does anybody have a motion to make on that?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. And I guess I should have said to Kelly, is that okay? It sounds like that would be okay with you. Yes. Okay. You're nodding. Okay. So then yes. I really do want to say that again. I've already said this, but Kelly, clearly she's been being really trying to get the IT people to get this done. So is there no, I believe there's no discussion. Nobody had any discussion on this motion then?
No.
Correct. Okay. So all in favor of the motion that Mike just made?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And I also vote in favor of it. So that would be, I guess, what we would ask then. And hopefully there will be some progress on the IT side of this as well. I know that they are very, very busy, or at least I'm told that they're very, very busy, and I certainly do not have any trouble believing that. So, was there anything else that you want to cover in the executive director report, Kelly? Okay. For old business, there is, I think, no old business that I know of. Does anybody have any old business?
Yes, there's old business. We're drafting that opinion.
Right, yes. Yeah, I'm aware of that, yes. So there will be an opinion coming out from that will be circulating a little later this week from the June 20th meeting. And then is there any new business that anyone has? Okay, so the next meeting is scheduled for August 2nd at 3 p.m. If it may be that we will learn something that will put this issue we've just discussed aside before then. And if there's nothing else, we can, as we get very close to August 2nd, I'm sure Kelly will inform us if anything new has come in. And if there isn't anything, if there's nothing to discuss, we would be able to, to cancel that meeting. I believe that we're required to meet 10 times during the year. Like I said before, I really didn't want to cancel 2 meetings in a row though. But I think that would be fine to cancel the August 2nd meeting if that happens, meaning that there's nothing to discuss. Other than that, we look forward to hearing from Kelly. And Kelly, if that turns out to be something that, you want to just talk about at the next meeting, that would be fine. So with that, I guess I would ask, is there a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make that
Close to
motion.
end. Yeah. Okay. And does anybody second motion to end the
Are you
meeting?
closing, Cindy, are you closing the
Yes,
meeting or are you
ending the
adjourning?
meeting. Yeah, adjourning I'm sorry, it's a close of meeting on the agenda. And that's like the date I was reading it to literally. So I apologize. Yes, to be clear, is there a motion to end the meeting?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, and with that, we are adjourned at 3:44 p.m. on July 6th, 2021.